Okay, and we're live. So, my name is Vina for anybody who hasn't been here before, and I'm really excited about tonight's topic because I've been wanting to have this discussion for a while, and I know it can be a little bit tricky talking about how much we spend, and I found a great panel of people to talk about. So, everybody want to go around and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Heather from Booktubes. I am a romance booktuber, like to do discussions, and I really don't buy books. So that is my ticket onto this live.
Hey everyone, I'm Ashley from Bookish Realm. I read a little bit of everything from every age group, every genre. I think I'm like 6 months in the game now. I haven't bought a book in about 6 months. So here I am.
I'm Saajid, and I buy books a lot, more than I probably should. But I have been good this year. I only bought like 10 books this year, which I guess is fine. And I'm from Books on My Social Life on YouTube and Musaho Books everywhere else.
All right. So, my first question was, what are your booktube buying habits? And for me, I did the math, or I tried to do the math on what I bought this year, and it was almost $400. And I was a little confused as to how I spent that much because I'm like, but I didn't even read a lot of books that I bought this year. But I had donated to a Kickstarter, and that was like $40 to fund a comic book Kickstarter. And then it was really the children's books, actually, like the picture books, that ate my money because I was helping my nieces build their libraries. Like my niece told me she's building her brown girl her brown girl shelf, so I was buying a bunch of books for them, and then there's about 5 of them. So that kind of ate up a lot of my money. And then just the rising prices this year have been insane.
Yeah, books are more expensive now.
Yeah, everything is. It's crazy.
When I saw that YA was $20 this year, and I had noticed it at the end of last year, I was I was shocked, and I'm asking people, can you believe it's $20? And they're like, it's not always that price. I'm like, no, it was lower last year, and it increased again.
It did. I processed Vina, I know you've seen these, the Mimi and the Boo Boo Blahs, that whole comic book series. I processed one today and I had to enter the price, and I feel like it was either $20.99 or $24.99. I'm like, that's absolutely ridiculous. You read that book in like 30 minutes tops. It's beautiful, but that's a high price for a kid's book.
Yeah,
I didn't even realize it was so much. I know they do it's a significant difference when they do the hardcover versus the paperback.
It is.
And I've been noticing that because I've been reading a lot of chapter books to try and help my niece because she's really doing badly with the reading right now.
Yeah.
But when I saw the price between the hardcover and the paperback, I was like, wow, how are these kids supposed to afford to read?
They can't.
Well, reading is a privilege, right?
It is.
I don't know how much money I spent on books for the year so far. I will say the majority of the 12 books that I bought this year were on discount, so that's a good thing. I also haven't bought a book online in almost a year, so that's a good thing. I did Splurge, so I went to Orlando in December, and I bought redacted amount of books, and let's just say I traveled with it was a family of 5. We went together, and I had books displaced in everybody's suitcase. So that's
wow.
And I wrote down which books were in which suitcases, so that when we reached home, it was really, my family was like, maybe you need to it's not that serious, and I'm like, no, it is that serious.
Were you overweight with your bag?
Oh yeah,
well, their bag is strict. They're really strict there.
They are. Each suitcase was on the mark. 1 or 2 of them was a pound over, but they usually don't Caribbean Airlines usually don't tell you
Yeah.
anything like that because they're accustomed to us literally like hauling back everything um, to Trinidad and to all over the region because West Indians are hoarders. But anyways, um, right. So what I was going to say too is my location actually influences a lot of. Since I'm not buying online anymore, I actually am just buying less books because generally in Trinidad, like if you go into the regular chain bookstores, you're only going to get like what's really, really popular in the reading world right now. So it's just a bunch of like Colleen Hoover and like a bunch of like, general bestsellers, like books with titles like So and So Is Not Okay. And that's pretty much all you get in the bookstores. There is there are local independent bookstores that specialize more in like Caribbean literature and stuff. So I like to support them, like paper based and stuff. But generally speaking, since I have stopped ordering online because of where I live, I just can't buy like the same level of books that I would if I was living in the US or something. So I think for me, it helps to not live in a country where I have great access. So, ironically.
Oh, the shipping fees are expensive because one time I sent stuff down to Trinidad, like books, and I spent $40, and I think I sent like 3 books.
You end up paying like the price of the book that you bought to bring it down here.
Yeah,
really
basically it was the price.
Yeah.
So I mostly spend my money on Kindle Unlimited, which has also just gone up, so that's exciting. I do pay full price for Kindle Unlimited. This is kind of a pet peeve of mine because I just wish people understood math like a little bit. That Amazon only pays their Kindle Unlimited authors out of the pool of money of people paying for Kindle Unlimited. So if you keep doing like free subscriptions and stuff, you're not putting any money in the pool, and then the authors keep like making less money, which like, if you can't, but you're not gaming Amazon, you're taking from the authors because Amazon takes it out of their money, not their own, right? So I always pay full price, which was like $120 a year, and now it's going to be like 144 or something like that. So like that's a lot for me, but I do read many books in Kindle Unlimited every single month. So I definitely do still get my money's worth. That's pretty much what I spend my money on. I read a lot from the library, and then I will buy the occasional ebook. The last time I bought a physical book, it was a manga that's only available physically, and I bought that in July of last year. And before that, I ordered a book. I ordered Zachary Yin and the Dragon Emperor because I wanted to read it right away for like the NB book club and stuff, but also I bought it for my kids because I was like, well, if they like it, they're gonna want to read it, and I'm not giving them my Kindle. Like, that's for me. So if you're gonna read it, you're gonna have to have the physical book. So like, I don't buy physical books, and I've bought maybe like I haven't bought any ebooks since March, and that was 4, and they were all like 99 cents or on sale. So like I just don't really buy. By far my biggest expense is Kindle Unlimited.
Well,
$100 a year, that's a lot.
I shifted a lot because the economy here in the US is just horrible at this point with the gas prices, food prices, and then also taking into consideration like my daughter is getting older, and so she is doing a lot more extracurricular activities, and no one told me how much these extracurricular activities cost for 30 minutes on a Saturday. So, but I mean, it's stuff that she's interested in, so I kind of shifted my perspective on what is a priority. And now I should be primarily reading from my collection, but I do work in a library. So, and I'm in a privileged position because I work in a very well funded library. So I pretty much have access to a lot of stuff that is coming out. And um, in my department, which is collection development, I handle the kid stuff, not the adult stuff, but we're doing a lot better as a whole in adding more independent authors to our collection, because a lot of times indie authors do not get the reviews that libraries need in order to consider fitting their collection management policies. But we're doing a lot better with that. So I'm blessed and privileged in that way that I kind of just shop the shelves at my library at this point. It's been an interesting shift, but it's been interesting seeing like what I'm spending my money on now as opposed to just hauling books and then they're sitting on my shelf and then I just don't read them, which is it's a waste.
Does your library tell you how much you save too? Like when you
No, and I wish they did, Vina, and I don't know how we would like turn a feature like that on. But now that you asked, I need to ask my manager tomorrow. But no, so I have no idea. But it's kind of disgusting because at my library, our max number is 60 items at one time. And so my daughter has a card, I have a card, my dad has a card. And so you can imagine the amount of damage that I do in a single month between 3 library cards. It's bad. It's really
My
bad.
library is 6.
Yeah, it's 60 here.
I don't actually know what the max is. I don't always go into the library. I mean, I went there today. I wanted to pick up this. I wanted my mom to read The God of Good Looks. I have to go get it for her.
Yeah.
And it has the total you say, but it has like today, and then it has rolling for me from 2015 because I don't go in as much. So I haven't really saved too much, only like $100 and something. But I use Hoopla more.
Oh yeah, Hoopla is great.
Yeah, my library is the librarian. We have tons of libraries all over the country. They're really small. The biggest one is Vina. I don't know if you've been to Nallis in Port of Spain. It's huge and it's amazing, and they have a lot of books, but they don't get new books. So, but they do have a big collection. So, like, if you want like a big collection of really interesting backlist books, they do have that. So I want to utilize them more eventually, but I do have to read I do have to prioritize my own collection as well. But yeah, it's again, it's like the location thing. You know, it's you're online and you're seeing what is popular on TikTok and Booktube, and that changes by week, right?
It does.
And when you're in a place where you can't even go to a bookstore to get that book, right? You have to either order it online or you have to go away or ask your relatives away. It kind of puts you in this position where you're unable to kind of be a part of the discourse. And that's why piracy is so common, especially in places where people just don't have the ability to buy those kinds of books. And that's why I don't support the idea of piracy, but like if everybody is reading, I don't know, this Sarah J. Maas is in our bookstores because she's that popular, but like if everybody's reading something by, I don't know, a really popular author, but it's just not in the libraries, it's not in the bookstores, you're gonna have a bunch of kids, downloading copies of it online. And that's just how it happens, because even if they do end up in the bookstores, they're so expensive, right? So it's like a lot of it is just like the issue of accessibility. Like your libraries are not getting the book, your bookstores are not getting the book, you don't have the money to get the book, you can't really order online for whatever reasons, because if you want to buy stuff online from Trinidad, you have to have something called a skybox, right? You can't, Amazon doesn't ship directly to Trinidad. They will ship you have to basically buy a US address, which is the skybox, and they ship it to the US address, and then they ship it to Trinidad, and you have to pay them in addition to paying Amazon. So you're paying like 2 prices. Yeah. So it's a lot.
No, I had that issue when I was sending books to Trinidad because one person I sent to did not have a skybox. So not only did it take like over a month for her to get the books, and I had to pay all that, like basically the price of the books to send it to her. And I didn't pay for those books. These were all books like I had gotten from the publisher. So I ended up putting out money to pay for these books. And then she has to go get them and pay tax on them.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then like I have a friend who does have a skybox. So it was at least like for that, I'm able to just pay the US like shipping, which is a lot cheaper, but it's still, you have to pay for that, and it's a lot of money.
Yeah, and all these skyboxes are in Miami, so if you live in like Washington State and you need to ship something to somebody in the Caribbean, you have to ship to Miami. So we love capitalism.
I've sent books down with my uncle when he was going back to Trinidad. I'm like, can you just drop off these books for me, even if you have to post them down there? I just like, it's too much money for me to send them.
This is why all West Indians going back home, we have very heavy suitcases. We carrying a bunch of shit for ourselves and for y'all.
Right. And like you were saying with the pirated books and stuff, I really do think that like if they were never going to be able to buy your book in the first place, I really don't see the issue. I understand, like, I would not pirate a book because I live in the US. It's just as simple as that. And truthfully, if I can't get it on Kindle Unlimited or at the library, it pretty much doesn't go on my TBR. Like, I don't keep it in front of my eyes like, oh, I just want to read this book so bad. Like, I can't, so I'm not doing that to myself. But, like, I have so many options in those two things that, you know, I wouldn't pirate a book. But let me tell you, if that was the only way that I could read and like I was never going to buy that book ever because it's like the same price as rent, I would pirate that in a heartbeat. And if I was not there, I wouldn't be mad about it because again, you were never a sale. You were not a potential sale at all. You know, it's a different conversation.
Yeah, that whole piracy thing I don't understand. Like, because even as a kid, when I didn't have money to buy all these books, I pirated books. Like, I was terrible. Like, I printed a book out from a piracy site and bound it in a folder.
I was going to say,
from the corporation. It's patriotic.
and I did it, like, sat at the school computer doing it too.
Also, I feel like it depends on the author as well, right? So, like, if it's an indie author or if it's just a smaller author and stuff, but you know, support the author if you could, right? But like, Sarah J. Maas is not going to like, you know, get a dent in her wallet because like a 14-year-old from Trinidad or Nigeria or Jamaica or some corner of even the US decided they wanted to read her book. Like, it's fine, you know?
Yeah. I think what irritates me about the piracy debate that happens, I'm sure it's going to happen again sometime this year because it happens.
Well, we don't start it.
Yes, the like go use your local library, and I'm like, y'all, it's not that simplistic.
What you want me to read from the local library? Pride and Prejudice?
You'll probably find all the historical like romances at the library.
Yeah, like there are no books that I read at my library.
I just feel like people don't understand that all libraries, and I'm only speaking about the US, they're not equally funded. And so, especially now with what's going on with book banning and book challenging and people completely pulling funding from libraries to basically shut them down.
Right.
Everybody's not on equal footing. Some of us live in counties or states or cities where the funding is just out of this world, depending upon how they look at how people are paying their taxes. But if you go to like a rural community, they're not getting a lot of funding and money into their library system.
Right.
So it will take them a while to get the most popular thing. They may not have a great collection, or they may have to literally hold on to books until they're literally just falling apart and they know that they cannot keep them. So I think that people's quick fix to that is to say, go use your library, but they don't take into consideration access to libraries, funding to libraries, because even, you know, we're not even talking about the global South and whether people in the global South have access to libraries, but even in your own backyard, people don't have access to libraries the way that you think they do. So I always hate that we get thrown into the conversation. It's like, wait, no, that's not how it works at all.
Right.
What do you want me to do?
Yeah, I've never been to a library.
It's often by people who don't actually use the library either. Like,
That
I had
part.
an author friend that because she was retweeting, go use your library instead of piracy stuff. I'm like, Have you been in your local library recently?
No.
Because
No.
like they're very different. Like for my card, I can access my city library and I can access the county library, and they're funded very differently. Like the county library basically covers all the suburbs around us, and they have all this technology and stuff that you can go rent there that we don't have in the city.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
books that they get is different. They're able to buy something faster because they have a bigger budget.
Yeah. And that too, this Read Love Listen, but they'll have the TikTok books, all are not created equal, and I'm in a decent community. Yeah. It also has to do with who's on the back end of selection. So if you don't have a team that is focused on, like, for instance, like in my department, whenever you submit a cart, it has to be 50-50. It has to be 50% diverse. You don't have a choice. It has to go. Now, everyone doesn't have that policy. So you may see some library systems that are only skewing towards what's popular on social media, on the internet. And then you have some who are like, okay, that may be popular. We will have that. But we also have to be able to balance that out, because we all know what's trending on TikTok and Instagram is not usually, from a wide range of voices at all. But that's a different story.
It's a true story, though.
Very much so.
This was a good point, too, about book depository closing, because that affected a lot of people. And I know they said use Blackwell's, but it's just not the same. Like, the books aren't available at the same time. With book depository, you could buy the US edition or you could buy the UK edition. With Blackwell's, you can only buy the UK edition, and it's not at the same discount. And I used to use book depository, too, sometimes to send to people outside of the US.
Yeah. Yeah, I did that too. Not Jess coming in here with that question, though.
What Booktube girlies do you think are going? Oh, that is actually on my list to talk about, so we can get right into that. I find it very interesting because, like, I've seen people in one video complain about not having money, and then in the next video you'll see them hauling a bunch of books, and then I haven't really seen it too much on my end of like Booktube. Like I mostly see it on Book Twitter, and I've seen it on like Bookstagram a lot, where people will post like GoFundMe's after hauling a bunch of books, or like I definitely have seen somebody constantly doing GoFundMe's and then hauling books from Barnes and Noble.
I cannot.
Getting called out for it too, because it was like a big thing. Because they had no idea for rent, but they were hauling books all the time, and they owed people money for like a book box. And then there was another instance with a girl. She was opening an indie bookstore, and she did a GoFundMe for that, and the bookstore never opened.
Oh shoot!
I mean,
where'd the money go?
You can
pocket, because the money, like there were no orders fulfilled.
Oh wow!
I don't remember what the name of this person was because I didn't follow them, but like somebody had showed me, and I'm like, that is crazy, because I wouldn't even GoFundMe somebody's small business. Like, having worked with small businesses to help them get funding, I would never GoFundMe anybody's business. But that's like, it's kind of strange seeing people haul books and then they're axing you for money.
You know what else? This is like not quite the same thing, but you know what else really like just amazes me, I guess, is the amount of booktubers who are constantly gifting books to other people. And I'm just like, how are you affording to literally spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars sending books to other booktubers for like every occasion? Like, I love you, but I am not sending you a book. It's wild, especially when it's like the same people all the time. I'm just like, I don't even understand having that type of disposable income.
I think that for me, how I perceive it is, if you got it, you got it. Is it a financial decision that I would make in my life? No, because the money that you put into buying a collection, as soon as you buy a book, you already are losing money. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to get full retail price back for it. Now, I have heard of people who have gone into debt. That's their decision. I personally think that for someone who's in a different stage, I also look at like demographically when it comes to booktube, because I don't have that much experience in BookTok. I think that for somebody who's in my age bracket, is a parent, has full-fledged responsibilities, pays all of their own bills, I'm not there's no way, you know what I'm saying? I can't afford to step into any type of debt over social media.
Right.
Um and some people just may feel like, well, I have the disposable income, then I'm just going to do it. But I guess part of me wonders, like, is it worth it in the long run when it's all said and done? Like, are you doing this
Right.
because you really, really want it? Are you doing this because you're keeping up with the Joneses? And I think when you start shifting over into, I'm doing this because I need to keep up a certain image or a certain status in the community, I think that's where that starts to become an issue, because then you're just buying stuff for the sake of buying. And then I think some people don't realize, whether you have the money or not, you are or do have some level of influence, whether you want it or not. You're on social
Mm-hmm.
media, you have a following, people respect you for whatever comes out of your mouth, whatever you say, whatever you do. So whether
Mm-hmm.
it's your intention or not, I know people who have been like, when I started my booktube channel, I wanted to start a booktube channel, but I felt like I had to have a large collection. I felt like I had to haul all these books. And it's like, well, no one's telling you that. But at the same time, there's kind of this undertone of pressure that you feel, that you won't get the views, you won't get the engagement if you're not hauling the latest special collection, or you don't have this massive spread of books behind
But
you. And
you
I
don't have a
recognize that. Even,
thumbnail where you're like,
yeah, that part.
Oh, and the big, like the book, a lot of people say they don't want to start it because they don't have like a big bookshelf like behind
Yeah,
them full of books.
yeah.
You guys can
And it,
see my little tapestry hanging on the wall. Like
and
you,
I think it's unfortunate, to be
yeah.
honest with you. I think it is. And I know for a lot of people it's not intentional, but even if something's not intentional, you have to think about the impact that you have. Intent versus
Mm-hmm.
impact. It may not, you don't mean to make anyone feel that way, but at the same time, you are impacting people. And as younger people, I think, continue to engage with book social media, because that is the thing now, being on book social media. Now I'm
Mm-hmm.
starting to think about, okay, well, how am I impacting people who may be younger, who are watching me and may
Right.
think that they have to have this or that. And with the prices of books rising, who can afford a book?
Those $30 adult fantasy novels.
No, who can afford that? Nobody can afford that. And I get kind of nervous about, like, how I could be influencing someone to think that they have to have certain things in order to be a part of this community,
yeah.
which sucks. That sucks.
And
Right.
also too, like you don't need to share everything. Like I feel like people have turned social media and YouTube and TikTok and everything into their diaries. Like we don't need to know every book you bought this month. We don't need to
Right.
know. I mean, I think a book haul once in a while is fine. Like maybe you go somewhere special, maybe you travel, you want to do a haul or something. But like you don't need to log every single book that you bought or even read, because wrap ups put that pressure on people too. Like I always feel this pressure to read a certain amount of books a month so that I could do a wrap up, right? And then I end up reading like one book for the month, right? It's like you don't need to like you don't need to do all of that. Like just talk about books, maybe like I feel like it's we have this sort of culture of quantity, and it's not just about hauling and buying books, but it's also about the books that you read. And even if you like, I'm not saying it's wrong, because I know there was the whole discourse, that's a whole other topic, about like people who read 400 books a year can't retain anything or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not saying that. I think that it's fine if you read 400 books a year, but there is this kind of like, when it comes to creating bookish content, a kind of like quantity over quality thing, where people so people might feel more pressured about like meeting a certain like quota per month with the books that they haul or wrap up or have in their TBR or whatever. And it's like, it's not that deep. Like just read what you want to read and talk about it. But because we have this culture of like, okay, at the end of the month we need to share how much books we've read and how much books we bought.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like this kind of like fast food culture but with books, right? And keeping up with what's popular and what's on TikTok and stuff is another part of it.
I would argue, and I think some of this is just like, me coming into like, I started my Booktube channel when I was like 29, right? Already married, already have multiple kids, have been a reader my whole life, have never been a book buyer, all that. So some of it might be my experience, and some of it's also I don't enjoy watching book hauls, I don't enjoy watching unboxings and stuff, so that's just my personal taste. Doesn't matter, I'm not the one clicking on your video. More power to you if that's what you like, right? But I kind of think it's lazy content to only ever like your entire channel is based on buying books or how many books you read or how many books you want to read. And to me, like, so much of that is staples of Booktube, and it's never going to go away, and it's good to have on your channel to a certain extent. But if like the only thing you can offer the community is how many books you read that month, that's like weird to me. Like, you don't have anything outside of that to talk about, or like any creative videos at all in any way. I don't know, I just think it's like a weird box that people put themselves into, and it's not necessary, and I think it's kind of boring.
I don't really watch like book hauls either. Like I do like unboxings every once in a while if somebody sends me like a special box or something. But honestly, that content doesn't even do well for me anyway. Like people will say like, oh, they do a lot of book hauls because they get the views and
I don't.
they want like the
I don't.
And I'm like, they don't do anything for me.
On the books that you're buying. It depends on the books that you're buying too, because it needs to be the kind of clickable books, right? And like, and the different reading communities prioritize different things as well. So like, I feel like the kind of books that I read, like the people who are interested in the kind of books that I read, are not the kind of people who would care to sit down and watch a book haul. And then it like, I mean, it's just like it's not much of a thing for some people, and yeah, I just don't get views on my book hauls, and I think that's a sign. I do plan on doing one this month, but it'll be like once or twice a year.
Book shopping videos, I'll watch if it's like an indie or something. It's like a unique bookstore. But if it's just a chain, I probably won't really watch because I just like will look through it and I'll start like seeing like fast forwarding to see like what they picked up. But then I feel like for book hauls, people most of the time don't know anything about the book besides the cover. So it's like not the same for me as if they're like shopping for other things. Like
I didn't want it about, but the cover was like so cute, so I had to pick it up.
That's kind of how it feels like. Like you'll get a lot of, oh, this cover is nice, but I don't know anything about the author or what the book's about or when it comes out or like so. And I feel like people aren't always as transparent about when they bought books versus when somebody sent them books or like a publisher sent them books. Like I get a lot of books from publishers, so I don't always have to buy. And you are supposed to like disclose when you're getting those books, but everybody doesn't. And then I find that a lot of like larger creators, you'll see them get so many books from their followers, and that I always wonder like when do you put a cap on like that getting books from your wish list when you're getting all this money like from your patrons, and then you're getting books sent to you from publishers, and because you have a larger following, they're willing to send you more and more because they want you to like talk about those books. So it's always like weird to me because like a lot of times the people sending them, they're making like significantly less money.
Yeah, I think it can be very interesting when you use kind of your parasocial relationship with your followers to reach your own success, in the sense that like you're having them buy you stuff, or I don't know. It's interesting. I don't think it's always wrong. I definitely don't. And I think that everyone deserves to make a living wage and all of that. But I do find it interesting when it's like a random viewer that you might not like, you wouldn't even like them in real life. Like you wouldn't be nice to them. You would be a jerk. And they're sending you books all the time because they love you, and you act like you love them back, and you wouldn't. I mean, some people would, and some people would for some viewers, and some people would for all their viewers or whatever. But I don't know. I think it's an interesting one-way street, if you will.
People abuse that word love when it comes to their followers and subscribers and stuff. Like, you don't love all those 10,000 people. You appreciate them, you're grateful for them, but you don't love them. You don't know them, you love them.
And like, I'm not knocking anybody like getting books bought off their wish list. Like, I did it. Like, people helped me build my niece's book help. That was something she really appreciated, and I actually was able to like spread those books out among the kids. But it's just kind of weird to me when I see like the bigger, and I'm talking about like the people who have like hundreds of thousands of followers, like who are in like the top like Booktube creators, like getting all because they're getting so much free stuff from the publishers. Because I know for Saajid it's different because he's outside the US, but in the US, publishers are a little bit more willing to give you the book because they aren't doing as much marketing. That's how I end up getting a lot of books. Like, they're not really pushing the book to market the book, so they want influencers to market the book. So they're going to give you the book so that you talk about it and then send them like your graphics or your video.
I'm barely reading the books that I buy. I don't need anybody to be sending me no free books. Like, real tea.
I get ones that I don't even ask for. Like, there's a particular marketing director, like, if it's diverse and he wants to push it, he'll send it my way and then send me an email after. Did you get the book I sent you? When are you going to post your coverage?
It's got brown people in it.
That's how it is sometimes. They're like, it has brown people in it, which I a lot of times it's children's books, so I can just pass it on to the kids. Although I tried donating to a school around here, and they were not answering my calls about donating to their library.
Y'all dragging this white man in the comments.
I know. I also love it.
Daniel Green. Everybody knows Daniel Green at this point. It's just kind of like that.
He apparently does it.
Watch him, but I've heard of him, and I know he's in a lot of controversy all the time.
Yeah,
he's up there.
He's up there.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like a writer
I like his videos, but I don't know about his controversies.
Yeah, he is. I think so, Vina, from what I understand.
I don't know. I don't read that type of fantasy, so I don't watch his videos. And those popular fantasies like are a lot of money too. Like I said, they're $30 and up now.
And then there's like series, so like you had to go buy like multiple books. I'm like, that's the thing. There's the thing too about like money for books, right? Like the kind of taste that you have would also dictate the amount of money that you spend on books.
Mm-hmm.
For like multiple reasons. So like if you read a lot of fantasy and sci-fi, you're buying series. Like at least I get away from that because I've only read 4 series. Like I've only completed 4 series in my entire life because I just don't read series. So that's the thing. And because I read a lot of like literary fiction too, because they're not easy to get in the bookstores, I just don't get to buy them. But if I was into Colleen Hoover, they have every single one of her books in all the bookstores in Trinidad. This woman have more books selling in Trinidad than people from Trinidad who write books. Right? So
yeah. My cousin was asking for book recs the other day, and from her friends from Trinidad were recommending Colleen Hoover. And she's
that's
like,
all people from Trinidad.
She's like, I read It Ends With Us. She's like, that wasn't it. She's like, send me something else.
Yeah. That's also the thing, right? So like whatever is most available to people and most marketed is what they will read. You walk into the average, unless you go to like an independent bookstore in Trinidad, which there's like 5 good ones, if so much, right? If you go into the average chain bookstore in Trinidad, there's a rickety shelf in the back with like a very small collection of overpriced West Indian fiction. And then the rest of the store is Colleen Hoover. Right? So, and I don't know who this, somebody I saw on TikTok was like, I don't know who this Colleen Hoover is. If I wanted to get a Hoover, I would go to Home Depot and buy a vacuum or whatever. But no, that's the thing too. Like, if that's all there is, if that's what you're into, you're going to buy more of it because it's more available, right?
Yeah.
So like yeah, so if I was more into like genre fiction, which I'm not super into genre fiction, at least not anymore, I would probably be spending a lot more money. So I'm kind of grateful for that, but also it sucks for the people who do like genre fiction because
Mhm.
it's like the options are so much and the market is so saturated, and it's like, especially if you're a content creator, there's that pressure to keep up with what people are reading, right? And it's
Yes.
just like, oh god, that's a lot.
I I going back to just the idea of like what is popular, like what creates access. And I think that the book community, whether that's on TikTok, Bookstagram, or Booktube, the value on things that are backlists, that are older, that are not as popular, there's no value put on those things. And so there are so many content creators out there that talk about books that many people have never heard of before, but the value is not there. And
Right.
so we're so hyper fixated on the, and this is not a judgment if you, because me is me, is as I always read what you want to read. I'm not your mama, I'm not your daddy. I can't control what you do. But the emphasis is put on the Sarah J. Masses, the Emily Henrys, the Colleen Hoovers. And so there is no initiative to, I don't want to say be different, but to go against the grain. There's no initiative to say, you know, I'm going to read a book that was published 20 years ago that maybe people have never heard of before. There's no initiative to read outside of different age categories. Like, there
Right.
are people who do it. I know plenty of people who do it, but they're not valued as much as those who are, I read the latest Colleen Hoover book, or, I read the latest Sarah J. Maas book, which, like I said, read what you want to read. But we as a community, too, as a collective, don't put a value on wanting to explore options or anything different. So we continue in this cycle of, we're just going to have to keep up and keep up and keep up and keep up. And then people who want to come in and break that cycle get so discouraged so quickly because they don't see the growth, they don't see the engagement, they don't see themselves being appreciated or valued in the community. And it's unfortunate because I've seen so many creators who have added so many recommendations to my list that no longer make content because they were too different from what is considered the norm.
Right.
Yeah, and that's something I was talking to a friend about like recently, because I said a lot of black backlist books are not in print anymore.
They're
Like, we'll
not.
talk about white YA books from from the early 2000s so much, and like they keep cycling back, and I'm like, all the black ones are out of print and people don't
Yeah.
talk about them, and people just pretend like black books didn't start getting written till
We were
2014.
liars.
And
And
I'm
Like,
like, that's not the truth at all. And I've had to correct people on that multiple times because I'm like, they were in my library. My library is, being in a city, having a specific demographic, always had to buy those books because those were the books that
yep.
the children there wanted to read. And I'm like, what did you guys think black bookstores were selling in the black neighborhoods prior to 2014? Because they've been around for a long time. That's not a new invention.
I mean, yeah, they just don't even know that it exists. And it is interesting pointing out kind of like the history erasure of, you can't buy those books anymore, so you assume they were never around in the first place because you weren't the one that had it in your lived experience. That's
Publishing
interesting.
and some authors are doing a horrible job at that too.
Oh, I've
But
been calling people out all the time.
yeah, I don't appreciate that too because, going back on like older, black literature for children, black literature for teenagers has always been a thing.
Yeah.
But you have authors now in the industry who are making it seem like they're the first to ever do it because, God forbid,
Right.
YA started when The Hate U Give came out. Like, that's when black books started, when The
that was
Hate
the
U
first
Give.
But
black.
then you can go on Hoopla and find some of those backlist books. And I encourage people to go on Hoopla and read some of those books. I'm like,
Listen,
my friend
I
and I are
used
doing a read along of some of those books because I'm like, these are the types of books I was reading as a teen. And I'm like, some of them are out of physical print, but you can still
can
get the
read them
ebook.
digitally. Yeah. I'm reading what is it? Rashonda Tate Billingsley, what's it called? It's something central. Is it Gossip Central? I can't remember, but
I think so. I know which one you're talking about.
yes,
I'm like, but that was from a whole Black teen imprint. People don't like
yes,
that went out of that, like got defunct like around I think 2014. So because
2014, Kimani True, yeah,
because it disappeared, people just pretend like it doesn't exist.
and
But
it
then we
did.
see kind of like the same like books from like Hunger Games and Twilight and stuff cycling over and over and over again. And they're heavily featured in, like, I was reading a YA recently and I'm like seeing the mentions of those books from like the teen characters in it. And I'm like, why don't we mention the other books?
I can't just go away.
I feel like in the literary community, it's like instead of TikToks, it's it's the prizes, right? So like with like I guess the more genre fiction book is like whatever is popular on TikTok is like whatever is what people's focusing on now, and like everything else that was published like 2, 3, 4 years ago is forgotten. I feel like the same thing kind of happens like if you look at the more literary fiction thing, like whoever's nominated for the Booker and the Women's Prize and the Pulitzer now, they're getting all the attention, but like a book that was on the long list like 3 years ago, nobody's reading it. So it's like this really weird thing where it's like a book has like 2 years to make a mark, and it's like either you become like a timeless book, like A Little Life or something, or we forget you. And I'm just like, a lot of these books are sitting down in libraries. They are, selling for cheap on Amazon and stuff. Read some of that, but like the whole trying to keep up with the Joneses, trying to keep up with what's popular. I mean, we are complicit as, and when I say we, I don't mean us specifically, but as content creators, we're complicit in that by participating in it. But I also think you have to blame the publishers and the corporations that are marketing specific books, right? Because some books just don't have the same machinery behind them, right? Or maybe they did when they were first published, and then the publisher moves on to something else. So, books are kind of becoming like music, like songs nowadays, no matter how good they are, they're just never going to have the same level of impact because so much is out now and in the streaming era, and like the quality, it's like it's like the fast fooding of books, right? So I don't know where I was going with that point, but
Well, it makes sense, though. It did make sense, especially with how much it's like a blip on the radar because there's always something new and better and shiny and the one that everyone's talking about. Or you do have like Sarah J. Maas, where it's like you can search her on YouTube and you're going to find videos from years and years ago and videos from today, like a ton.
Yeah, and like the aesthetic of being a reader right now is very popular to the point where you have people going to buy books, just like random books, no thought process behind it, to put on their shelf to display in their house. And like I remember seeing like a little article based off of like a tweet where an indie bookstore owner said somebody came and they bought like thousands of dollars worth of books just because they were using them to like showcase their house that they were selling, and then they came and returned all of them because it just looked better for the house to have like it seemed like the owner is a reader.
Right. And the thing is, like, I'm not a gatekeeper. Like, I don't care if you buy hundreds of books a year and don't read any of them. I don't care if you do read hundreds of books a year. I don't care what you do with your time, your money, your house. More power to you. If you want to look like a reader without being a reader, more power to you. I don't care. But it becoming popular, I guess, is frustrating. And part of it is because it really like helps to perpetuate white supremacy in publishing because it is always like the white authors and the white books and the very problematic books that become so insanely popular. And there's just like no, like Ashley was even saying earlier about like when you're a YouTuber or a booktuber, there's not really reward for you for being different. Like I would say that all of our content is a little bit different from like the mainstream booktube. And like we aren't rewarded with views or with subscribers for that, and that's fine because like the people who like watching me and like what I like to read, and that's what I like to read, so that's what I'm gonna make content about. But like you're not rewarded for it, and in the same way, like diversity in publishing isn't rewarded because you have all of this like new like mainstream, you can blame book talk if you want, but you certainly don't have to, readers, and they don't care and they don't know, and they are only going to read the popular books, and the most popular books are going to be
Like
problematic by authors.
white Americans, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
there's
just
a lot
what
of
it is.
like new booktubers who pop up all the time and they just read what's popular. And there's a lot of people actually getting a lot of followers very quickly off of just reading what's popular, constantly doing like Barnes and Noble like shopping trips. And
Yeah.
people who go out of their way to do like creative content really don't get the views.
They don't, and it's unfortunate. It. You want to talk about like a discussion that gets under my skin, and not even from my own perspective. It's watching other creators who are amazing in the content that they produce, the creative stuff that they produce, but they do it with material that is not, you know, on Book Talk, not the latest and the greatest. And that's how I
Yeah.
feel like you expand your reading, but they're not rewarded for that, and it's so I get frustrated on other people's behalf because I just feel like there's so many people in this community who should be much bigger than what they are for their creativity, their wide range of what they read, what they showcase and what they read. I don't know. I don't. I just feel
Well,
like.
I think it
Go
is
ahead.
frustrating to know you could immediately grow your channel by talking about 5 specific books. If you made
Yes.
video after video about those fandoms, your channel would grow immediately.
Yeah, because even like I get recommended people all the time, just like on my homepage, and they don't have a lot of subscribers, but their videos have a lot of views, and they're just talking about like the same popular books.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I I consider it all the time like conceding and giving in and reading popular books so that I could get some more traction, and that I could balance that out by also sharing the books that I
Mm-hmm.
genuinely want to read. But I'm just like, I have to read like books that I just don't care to read so that I could get the views, so that I could then platform the books that I feel like people should be reading. And it's like, that's just kind of messed up, you know? And I remember when I first started watching Booktube, I mean, this was always an issue, like reading the popular books or whatnot. But like, you watched people because you just enjoyed them talking about books. Like I love watching Thoughts on Tomes, Sam. I don't know what it is
Mm-hmm.
about her videos. Even when I'm on a booktube like block and I can't watch booktube videos, I still watch hers. And I don't want to read any books that she talk about because she only talk about fantasy and romance, and it's just not my thing. But I love seeing her talk about, like, I enjoy her perspective, and it's like,
Mhm.
even if somebody's reading something that you will never read, right? Like if you don't like classics, you're not gonna read the classics, but you could still watch, like, for the love of classics, and enjoy her videos, right? And
Mm-hmm.
enjoy the way that she talks about the books that she reads, and enjoy, like, I just want to see you enjoy the books that you read and give me your thoughts on them. It's not always about like I want you to read what I read too, you
Right.
know? And I feel like the community might have lost that a little bit, especially with, I mean, I don't be on TikTok, so I don't know a lot about TikTok. So I jump to a lot of conclusions about TikTok. But I feel like this culture of just like, okay, somebody, I would see people post things like, recommending 5 books, and it's like A Little Life and Colleen Hoover, and you don't need to recommend that.
I hate it so much.
Why are you recommending a quarter of this and that and the other to me?
Yeah.
Everybody done read that. Like, you don't need to recommend that. Recommend something different, or
Right.
even like, if you like this, do this. That's nice. But like, you just
Yeah.
making a video where you highlight 5 very popular books that's 10 seconds long, and everybody's
Right.
liking your video and be like, I love
Right.
this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't recommend going into debt. Like so I work in banking. I used to work with the people who, like, the customers who were in debt, and it's not pretty. Like, I would see
a good life.
people, I would have to talk to people who were begging for us to give them like loans or give them like fees back just so that they could pay their rent for the month. So I can't support anybody like going into debt over buying books. And like, I've even had talks with like friends who like I know don't have money, and I see them buying a lot of books. Like, I will pull you aside and tell you, like, make better choices.
And you have those clicky titles that are like, buying 100 books so I can feel something.
Yeah. And also, I feel like some people sometimes go book haul, like, because they're depressed. And while, like, yes, like, we talk about retail therapy being fun, that's not going to solve your depression. And I feel like the viewers sometimes on Booktube enable that. Like, like, I've seen people complain about how they're depressed, how they're not really reading, and then viewers will come and like you encourage them to buy a bunch of books that they're not actually interested in, or all that popular book that they know they're not going to love.
I just can't relate to that. Like, the way that I would never change my reading or like strain my financials, like not even because I have a family, although obviously I have a family. Like, I'm not going to take food out of my children's mouths to do a book haul. But just like, it's just a wild concept to me. Even to like make content that I don't like, or even to watch content that I don't like. I'm not watching your video if I don't like you, or I don't like your content, or I just don't care about that content. I'm not watching you. People are. I'm happy for them. I don't care. Like, it's just, and it's not even that I'm like completely unbothered about everything in life, because let's be honest, I can be very sensitive and very easily offended and just like, oh, I just wish everybody likes me. But at the same time, like, I just cannot relate to like basing my entire channel and or my life on what random people on the internet want from me. And like, sometimes they do ask for stuff and I'm like, no, I don't want to read that. I'm not doing that. No.
I think a lot of that too has to do with perception of self before you step into this community and into social media. I think a lot of that plays a role in how you handle certain things, because unfortunately, and this is not a judgment, but I think it's very easy. And then I think thinking about it in context of the pandemic, it's easy to get tied into social media at this point. It's all around us. It's, for a lot of people, with the generation coming after me, they were born with social media. That's what they know. That's they're used to engaging in that. And I think that coming into your own and forming an identity on the internet is rough. It is very, very rough in how you perceive yourself, and I'm just thinking about like what you're saying, Heather, that how you want others to perceive you. I think I'm just, and everybody gets to this stage, different phases in your life, but I'm too old. Like, y'all saw what I put on Instagram today. Like, I have no coof anymore. Like, if I'm gonna say what I say, how I say it, when I want to say it. I just can't be so bothered with, if you like me, cool. If you don't, child, that's fine too, because everybody's not finna like me. I can't be so pressed about how people perceive me on the internet anymore, because it's not my everyday reality. I have a life to live outside of a screen, and some people may not be in that phase yet. And that's not a judgment, because I get that and I have been there.
Right.
But I think when you're in that moment and everything about how people perceive you on the internet, how you're going to look, what's going to do best, and I need to succeed on social media, it's just kind of like, I have to live outside of this. I can't build my life around this. I can't function. And for me, I mean, even thinking about it from a monetary stance, like, Booktube is not the place to be making bank. Okay?
Right, exactly.
Not at all.
If I'm going to fake something, it's going to be in a different community.
On Booktube. You have to be so huge And it's
Yep.
so up and down. And as someone that
And
craves financial stability, I literally am in a point in my life where like I can't afford not to be financially stable. I can't afford not to be able to take care of myself. I can't afford not to be able to take care of my child. So at this point, it's just kind of like I have to do what makes me comfortable, do what makes me happy, and be done with it. But I know everybody's not there. And so you end up in this cycle of I need to do what everybody else is doing. I have to buy what everybody else is buying because I need this to be successful. I need to grow. And I know that this is a good way to make money. And it's just it's stressful. It's stressful. And I wish that we as content creators were more open and honest, especially those of us who are making money, about how stressful this shit really is on the back end. Cause it's not all glamour and glitz, but a lot of us are not transparent about that. So people don't know that.
Right.
it's also about location. Again, like I keep going back to location, but that's just because I'm here, right? Like you can't, like Trinidad is not eligible for monetization. So
Hmm.
I can't make AdSense on my videos. I don't, maybe Patreon is, I don't know. But a lot of those things, like if you want to do it, you have to have a US account, and not everybody,
Yep.
most people don't, right? And so it's like also being a part of the community from the global south, like the vast majority of people recommending books on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram are based in the global north, right? So
Hmm.
that kind of like American centrism, and I talk about this all the time to the point where I'm actually fed up of saying these terms, but like the American centrism and the global north centrism in the online bookish community.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense because it's based on factors that are far beyond the book community itself. Like we're talking about like global issues here, but the way that it structures the community with publishing houses mostly being in the global north, even People Press, which is like the primary publishing house for like Caribbean fiction and stuff, is based in the UK, right? So there's
Yeah.
always this kind of like we always have to cross a bridge, and it's extra for us because we have less access, we have to spend more money,
Right.
it's different, and it impacts the buying habits, it impacts the spending, um, and it's why a lot of like kids, from this country who are reading predominantly, they'll read what is easy for them to read, they'll read what is put right in front of them, so they'll read those books that are in the bookstores, the Colleen Hoovers and the Sarah J. Maas. And that's why I don't judge people, because it's very easy to, and I like to be snarky and make my comments. I ain't gonna lie, I'm a little judgy, but I don't like to be like, okay, this person is like has horrid taste because they're reading just Colleen Hoover or they're reading just Sarah J. Maas, so that's all they're buying, and it's like, well, that's all that's really available to them,
Yeah.
and the way that consumerism works is that people will pick up what's right in front of them, right? Most people are not going to do the digging to find something else. So
No, but I didn't realize it till I started till you pointed it out, and then I started talking to my cousin about it. The reason why she likes historical romance is because that's all they were selling.
yeah,
That's
oh
all they had to offer.
Wow.
And it was so you were getting not even like the Beverly Jenkins historical romance, just like the whitest stuff you could find.
They sell that, and they sell these books, these like small romance books, the mass paperbacks, and they all have the same like covers. I don't know what editions of it or whatever. One time I saw a man, ladies, get you a man. This man came into the store and he bought 1,200 TT, which is like, a, that's like, divide that by six, right? 1,200 TT, divide that by six for the US number. 1,200 TT, that's still a lot of money, right? On
Yeah.
books for his wife. She like picked out, she was like texting him and telling him which ones she wanted. And it was like all these, and even though it was a lot of money, it was a lot of books because these books are cheap, right?
Mhm.
And they're available in mass quantity. Meanwhile, if you want to read 1,200 books of Caribbean literature, you're going to get like 5 books from the rickety shelf in the back, right? Whereas he was walking away with like 20 something books, right?
Wow.
Get you a man who gonna spend that kind of money on you.
That's because they don't make nearly as much money as we do in the US at all.
Right.
Like
Right.
somebody asked me when I went on vacation, after I came back from vacation, they're like, "Did you buy books when you were in Guyana? With what bookstores?" Their bookstores are all selling textbooks. They don't. All the bookstores I saw there were just school books.
Yeah.
They don't get the books that
They
I
just
took
have
books
regular
down
ink
there.
that they write on. Just kidding.
Yeah, I took books down there, and we're trying to give them away because I'm like, they don't get the same books that we get up here.
And
Yeah.
also privilege within the global south, because Trinidad, like, we're a lot better with books and literature in general. Like, we actually have, I talk about it being difficult. We actually have a really amazing, like, local literary community. It's a bit niche, so like the general readers of Trinidad and Tobago are not in it. But like,
I'm sorry, because Bree, I think Bree typed
Bree?
What'd she say?
She said 4 authors instead of
4
white
authors?
authors,
She
and
white?
I'm dying.
What'd she say that?
It's the very last comment. It didn't post. You can't
Oh,
see it.
I see.
Yeah, there you go.
That was very funny.
Whore a race?
That was really good.
No, but even like, they put it in perspective, even the things like picture books. I gave some picture books to my cousin's children because and some of them were by Caribbean authors. They're not getting those books down there, even though they're written by local authors, because they're published in the US. There's so much more money. They don't and the way rights work, they are considered like since they're the Commonwealth. Oh, they have to get their books through the UK publishers.
Yeah.
So I went to a book launch for Hungry Ghosts earlier this year, which is a local author. Again, the literary community of Trinidad and Tobago is magnificent, and going to those events are the best because that's when you really get to meet the local authors and stuff. And I ran into Brianne McIver, who wrote that book that you were talking about. I forgot the title. And I met a few others like Lisa Allen Agostini and Andre Bagu, and it's so nice that we have that like small culture of celebrating local authors in Trinidad. And one of the things somebody at the event said that this is the first time in like the history of like Caribbean authors that we see the majority of these authors, or like at least a good amount of them, are writers, and they are still based in the Caribbean. Because like up to 10, 20 years ago, the vast majority of Caribbean authors were living in the global north. They had to immigrate, right? Because you don't get publishing opportunities here. And actually we still don't have big publishing houses here. Those authors I just mentioned, even though they're based here, they're still publishing through the bigger publishers. It's just easier to do that now remotely, right? Mm-hmm. Especially after the era of the pandemic, but before that as well, right? But like, if you think about like classic Caribbean writers, when you go back to people like V.S. Naipaul, or like, the intelligentsia people like, I don't know, C.L.R. James and all of them, they were all living in the diaspora, right? They were all living in the UK and then eventually the US and Canada, right? So it's like, we're always in conversation with the global north. We're always having to benefit from the global north is always benefiting off of us in some way, right? Even till today. So,
and then changing the stories too for like to fit the audience
palatability as well. Yeah,
I often think about the fact, because I didn't grow up with the internet. I got internet basically when I was a teenager, and it was not good internet. And I grew up, my dad is a independent Baptist pastor, which is very heavy in evangelicalism and fundamentalism and white nationalism, conservative, like most conservative people you can imagine. We didn't like cover our hair, but like we weren't allowed to wear pants or anything like that. So all of my media consumption was very, very controlled, right? Mm-hmm. And my books when I was a kid, because I was always a reader, all of my books were read by my mother, and they had to be approved by her for me to be able to read them. But also, like, we were poor and we lived in small rural towns. So we had a bookmobile for like a couple years. That was like our access to the library. And our our books were from the library or they were from yard sales. Like if a book was $1, that was a splurge. And so I often think about how if I had had access to the book community, or if my access to books was still the same as it was when I was a kid, how frustrating I would find it to see the book community and see all these books that sound so good constantly being talked to me and have no access to them. Know that like there was no way I was going to read those, because my reading was whatever was available to me. I've always been a book a day type of person, and I very much was as a child. So my ability to read far outpaced the amount of books I had access to, far outpaced. So I reread all the time. But so I read all sorts of books that I would never have been interested in if I had any other option, but I wanted to read, and that was the only book. I remember reading a book about algae and like how it could like be the source of food in the future for space and stuff. And I was just like, wow, this is fascinating. This is very interesting. But like, I would not enjoy the book community never having access to any of the recommendations I was given. I wouldn't.
Yeah. And I think that's the issue with a lot of people. Like you can't access a lot of what is being discussed.
Yeah.
Right? Or you can't afford it, or it's just not available to you in some way or the other. And that sucks.
And like it's nice to read what you have available to you. It's much less nice knowing what you're missing out on.
I wish booktubers would bring back library halls. I mean, I don't know if people still do it, but like
Ray
library halls.
Ray does some. Ray, I think her channel is Ray Books. She is a librarian, and she does a series of like her currently checked out, where she talks about all the books she checks out from her library.
Yeah. I think once again going back to that value thing, they're not valued as much, which is it's amazing.
Yeah, because she deserves so many more views than she gets, because she also reads like a wide range. She doesn't only just check out like what, like, because she is a children, like she works in the children's section of her library, but she also reads just like from every genre.
Yeah. That's what I'm getting at. Like it's disappointing watching creators.
My library doesn't allow adults into the young adult section.
I don't think mine does either. To be for
mine
like
doesn't either.
Safe space.
Yeah, mine doesn't either. Unless you're an adult looking for specific books or recommendations. Yeah, you're not, because it's a safe space.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. None of my libraries have been like that. That's really interesting.
I have like a smaller branch like in walking distance to me, and then I have like the bigger main library. So like the branch is just like one room, so you're gonna be in all the sections of the library there. Right. But at the main library, like they have the teen section in a separate spot in the back of the building. It's just for them.
Yeah,
because they do like a lot of different activities and stuff with them, and like they have it upstairs, like away from the adult section.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do feel like it branches is a little bit harder because of the confinements of space, and so you have some librarians who try very hard to make it clear that there's a teen space, or they'll create certain boundaries as much as they can. But yeah, I know exactly for our main location, it's on a different floor than the adult section. You'll find adults coming downstairs, and immediately it's kind of like, no, you can't be in this section. They're the same way with the children's section too. We do that for the safety of the kids. If you're not there, like as soon as you walk to the desk and you don't have kids, the first thing they ask you is like, "What can I help you with?" Because of the nature of what has happened in the children's section with adults coming down.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Right.
I was pressed about that when I turned 18 because that was when I was like cut off, and back then I was still a YA reader.
Yeah.
But now I don't really read YA anymore, so it doesn't affect me. And looking back on it, I'm like, yeah, that actually makes sense. I mean, maybe not barring like an 18 or 19-year-old, but like, and people are creeps, and if they know there are teenagers in a room,
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. We can understand.
I do remember walking into the library at the desk checking out books, and she's like, "Oh, you're over 21. I need to update your library card because it had my age in the system wrong."
Oh wow.
Interesting.
I'm trying to think, it's been so long since I've created a library card. I don't think we do. Do we do age or we just do birthday? I think we just do birthday.
I've had my card for so long, like since like 2003. So like I hadn't gotten a new one. I was just using the same one, so they had to like update things.
I still have mine from 2001 that I use. It's very outdated. I'm like, no, I want my seniority. No, that like I don't have the new fancy one. I have this one.
I always try to understand patrons who had the old school cards who would come in and we're like, oh, do you want to update your card? No. Their card is literally
they never gave me a new card though. They only updated the system.
We can give you a new card, and I mean, like, everything's falling apart. You could barely scan the number anymore. You can't. That's one of the originals. I'm like, okay,
exactly.
Right. Okay. I get it.
So there's like they need to know that I've been at the library so long.
That's how you know.
I was here before you were, Mr. Librarian.
Support your libraries, okay?
Yeah. Yes, please do.
I'm going to continue to buy books I can't afford, but y'all support your library.
Wow.
My library, I would say, is doing a decent job though, because I saw they are even like giving away a lot of free books this year, like as part of their summer program, like the prizes. They used to not give away free books. They used to give away like stuff for local businesses and stuff. Now I'm seeing like a lot of the popular books on the shelf. They're giving them away, like the inheritance games and like important stuff. They're giving away copies to the kids for reading.
I wonder if they got grant money for that.
I think so. I know they had gotten grant money to like build meeting rooms too.
Okay.
For people, and they do a lot of fundraising. Like they just had like a celebrity bartender night the other night fundraising for the library.
Okay. So they do it big for fundraising. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's cool.
One of the questions I had was, do you think the economy will change buying habits? And I know Ashley talked about that a little bit before. Like, I work in banking again, so I'm seeing stuff go downhill. We actually let go hundreds of people in the past like couple of months just because everybody is like at home now. They don't need to come into the branch for money. They don't need as many people on the phones. They don't need people getting paid to basically manage an email box. So like I'm seeing like and I'm seeing it in a lot of local businesses too, where people are getting laid off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know if the economy here in the U.S. is going to change until we hit a recession. I'm not sure. I realized how bad it was when I went to go buy my house. That's when I realized things were extremely in a bad place, because houses that I was seeing when I was looking early on to about maybe 2-3 months in the process, what I was able to afford, I could no longer afford because interest rates had skyrocketed. And so I don't think sometimes people realize you may not see the immediate effects all the time, but I'm sure you see it, Vina, with this. Once interest rates start going up, it's like everything is it's gonna trickle down eventually. But I don't know. With all this argument with the debts, I know they came to an agreement, but at what cost now? Yeah. I don't know if it's going to change, and I don't know if it's going to change people's spending habits, because I think it's depending upon what situation they're already in. So, like if you're, living with a relative or you have a roommate or whatever the case may be, your expenses may not be as difficult as someone who's not splitting their expenses with somebody, if that makes any sense. And so I don't know. I don't know. I feel like we're in a stage of spend it if you have it. And so I don't know if people are going to care.
I think that's a lot of people's mentality though, right
now. Yes.
And we're seeing people like justify to themselves like buying a bunch of books. They're like, well, I'm not just a reader, I'm a collector. I'm like, collectors curate their collections. Like, they don't just pick up everything.
Yeah.
They know what they're picking up.
And people too, like the, I mean, I don't know. The value of things right now is just kind of like, it doesn't feel like it will have the same value as like I went to our university, their collection, like an originally published Pride and Prejudice in 3 volumes type of collection. I don't know if anything is going to have value like that 50 years from now. And so it's just kind of like when people say like I'm collecting, and I'm like, but for what purpose? Because I don't know if this stuff is gonna have literary value. Honestly, like I don't know if Sarah J. Maas is gonna have literary value in 50 years from now.
Yeah. I mean, I think they just want a home library a lot of the times, and I think your biggest factor on how people spend disposable income within an economy is there any disposable income? It really depends on how bad it gets, right? Because if it gets to a certain level of bad, you will often see a lot of very irresponsible spending because you're trying to cope with life. That's not doing you well. And different personalities and different people, do that in different ways. But you will definitely see people spending money they do not have because life is bad. But it can also get to a point where there is no free time for reading because you're working 3 jobs. There is no disposable income for even the smallest thing because you are so everything's maxed out. You're never going to catch up. And also, like, the things that are disposable are books, are YouTube, are all of those extras, all those niceties, all those things that you don't need to survive. Maybe you will be able to maintain it, but maybe your viewers won't, and they will no longer be watching you because, again, they're working 3 jobs, and they're working 3 jobs to be significantly worse off than they were 5 years ago, right? So it just depends, like, do we reach that point, or is it just kind of like a thing where, and again, like, this person will no longer be able to make content, and they will no longer be able to buy books, and they will no longer be a reader, and they won't be part of the community. The community won't know this or care, but you have to have enough people who are able to spend their time and money on books to have a community in the first place.
Yeah, and like what Ashley mentioned earlier about the resale value of these books, we see people haul books all the time and then unhaul them, and then they're trying to sell it on Pango, and they're getting significantly less than the book costs.
Yeah. Which is, I mean,
but people tell you, oh, we're justifying it. I remember in 2020 they were saying like, oh, well, it's okay because you can always resell books or like donate them to the thrift store. And first of all, don't just donate to the thrift store. They throw out those books anyway. Like, a lot of those books end up in the trash. Like, I think I saw something that said like billions of books end up in the trash from thrift stores each year. So they're not all going to go to a good home, ideally, like people would hope.
Yeah, and also if you're gonna buy books just to resell them, like, start a bookstore. Like, what are you doing? Like,
I'm done.
Don't fund me it though.
I am done. Yeah, I think that, now one thing I feel like I do collect, I mean, going back to the book collection, is that comics, that's an industry where the resale value is phenomenal. I paid this one issue of a comic that I paid for. It was, when I bought it was $3.99. By the time I went to go pick it up, because I had it on my pull list, by the time I went to go pick it up the day it dropped, it was already $30-$40 on eBay because it was a first appearance. And so in something like that, in an industry where those things are highly valued, which the comic book industry has always been like that, that collection, which is also an expensive hobby, but the turnaround on having a collection like that is worth the money, because in the future people are starting to look to collect those things. I just think that for some of the books that, if you want to collect, you collect. If that's what you want, you know, your home library, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that thinking that you're going to have a big turnaround on resale value is where people, I think, mess up a little bit,
Oh yeah.
because it's not going to equal out the way you think it is in the long run.
Also, if your thing is being a book collector, I think I mean, as you said, Vina, like you curate your collection, so you have to collect in a way that's smart. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do is to try to utilize reading ebooks more, so that I
Mm.
reduce the amount of physical books in my collection. But also, if I really, really love an ebook, I could go buy the physical copy and like have it in my collection. As
Yes.
opposed to having a bunch of books in my collection that I never get around to, or I'm not that interested in, or maybe I do read them, but I never love them, but they're just kind of like there on my shelves. Like there are smarter ways to kind of go about collecting, prioritizing what you genuinely want to
Mhm.
read, and using the library, using audiobooks and ebooks or whatever as a means to read as much as you can, and then bring those books into your collection if you feel like they're worthy of that. And that's what I'm trying to practice. Not saying I'm good at it, because it's really easy to fall down the trap, but I think that's the better approach if you want to build a library. Because like building a library sounds easy, you just buy a bunch of books, but books accumulate very quickly. If you have like a 14 like square feet space to build your library in the future, like what do you really want in there by the time you're like 50 years old? you know you want to have like some Sarah J Mask collector's
I
edition
mean,
of something.
I think a lot of it is just it's a trend. It's just
Yeah.
popular to
Mhm.
do right now. They're not going to
Yeah.
have those books in their house 30 years from now. They're not. And
They're
if
not.
they do, more power to them. Happy for you. And if you
Yeah.
don't, happy for you. Doesn't do anything to me, but I personally just kind of view it as a trend that people participate in to their detriment or not.
I wonder how, this is kind of not related, but I wonder how this trend, which as a librarian makes me happy, um, but also causes some things with me and what gets pushed out and what doesn't get pushed out in terms of recommendations. I wonder how the trend with reading will change in the next 10 years. Because it's amazing that it's literally become a viral trend. It's,
Mm-hmm.
I hate the word aesthetic, but
I know. I think of you every time I use
oh
it.
my
Like,
God, I hate that word so much.
But it is people's aesthetic. People are buying books just to be like a reader, even if they're not going to read them all.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
looking like a
It's
reader
my
right now.
dark academia aesthetic.
Oh my God, this is
My
like
dark
the worst
academia
combination
fantasy.
for me.
oh, it's beautiful. I love this.
Oh gosh. Yeah, but I'm interested in seeing what happens in 10 years when, we move on to the next thing. Because I will say, like, as we progress through generations, there's this huge thing, I think, with instant gratification. We need results, we need satisfaction now. The whole idea of waiting and being patient for things it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
And so I wonder how quickly we have fallen into the trend of reading. How quickly will we fall out of it? And it, for me, from a librarian's perspective, it's interesting because I love that people are reading, especially
Of
with
course.
the idea of literacy. It is a privilege. Literacy is a privilege.
Mhm.
And the U.S. is dealing with serious literacy issues right now because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I would just hate to see so many people engaging in reading and then all of a sudden they just stop. But I feel like it's inevitable, to be honest with you.
That's what happened with Twilight. Like, we credited so much with bringing people into reading, but a lot of people read that series and fell off of reading. Like,
Yes.
right after.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And,
mean, go ahead, sorry.
it's okay. I know I mentioned this a lot, but it's just like a thing in my head that readers really like view themselves as the superior media consumers because we're readers, we're leaders, we're all of that. And it's like if you don't like to read, if you don't read, that's okay. Like it's okay. I personally like would really be so sad if I didn't have reading in my life. But like my husband is dyslexic. He does not enjoy reading. He never has. He really did not have the help he needed. So like he can read, but reading for him is so much slower than it is for me. That one, he literally can't even fathom how fast I can read. And second of all, he always got very frustrated with himself that he's still like trying to consume this sentence. And so reading was never fun for him. And let's be honest, he's in his 30s, probably never will be. It's not probably not a thing that he's gonna randomly decide that he likes now. And that's okay. That doesn't make him dumb. Even if it did make him dumb, that's okay too. Like we're not ableist over here. If you're not that smart, that's okay. But not reading or reading, either one, wearing blue light glasses it's not a measure of your intelligence.
It's not.
I relate to that a lot. Sorry, go ahead, Ash.
No, I don't know who was talking first. You go.
Okay, fine. I mean, I was saying like I relate to that a lot because I am a very slow reader. I don't do more than 30 books a year usually. Every year I try to do more than we'll see what happens this year. But like generally speaking, I don't do more than 30 books a year, and I always pressure myself to because I started reading at a late age. Like, well, I could have always read since I was a child, but like as a hobby, I didn't start until I was 17, right? Because I read a Nancy Drew book for the kicks of it, and I was like, wait, Miss Nancy. And, I'm like, okay, wait, hold on. This is kind of like the reading thing is kind of like it's kind of the tea. So I started getting into reading, but like I was a very slow reader because I'm like now getting into it. I started reading as a hobby in July of 2014. I discovered Booktube in August of 2014. So my reading life from the inception has always been tied to Booktube, and I became a Booktuber just a year later, right? Yeah. But even in that year before I became a Booktuber, I was watching Booktube. So like I was never, I don't know what it is to be a reader with, we love a good Nancy. I don't know what it is to be a reader without Booktube, basically, right? So I have the pressures that Booktube puts on you as a reader has been ingrained into my entire reading life. And that is something that I struggle with till this day because it's like I feel very inadequate for reading like 30 books a year, sometimes 20 books a year. I feel really inadequate. And then I have to kind of remind myself, I'm like, first of all, I'm reading more than I'm reading. Like I never used to read. If it wasn't for Nancy, I wouldn't even be reading a book a year.
And you're in school. Like I was reading like maybe 2 books a year when I was in school.
I wasn't reading
at all. I had a job when I was in school. And that was only on breaks. Like
I'm never reading when I'm supposed to be reading.
I had a job. I had a life. Like I was in clubs. There were parties. Like I wasn't reading like some of these people we see who were like actively reading while going to school. And they're reading.
I know.
That was never me.
I would not have had a Booktube in college. That's crazy.
Yeah, I wouldn't have
like
either.
I read 30 more books a year than most people, right?
Exactly.
And then also I read some good ass books. You know what I mean? Like I see some people, they read like a lot of books, but then maybe they're not reading like maybe out of like that like 100 books they read, there's 10 books that really stick with them for the rest of their life. Whereas I'm reading 30 books, but there's also 10 books out of that, so it's like maybe I read some good ass books. You know what I mean? So it's like I have to consider the quality and not just the quantity of what I read too. And I always tell myself this, but so long as I'm on Booktube, I'm still working with that pressure. But I have to stop sometimes and remind myself like it's really not that deep. Like you're doing just fine. Yeah. Like you're doing amazing. Pat yourself on the shoulder.
Right. It really is just about enjoying reading. And I think anytime that you make it any more complicated than that, you kind of are in the weeds because like I read a lot of books and I don't care how many books I read. What I care about is how much I'm reading, how much I'm enjoying reading. because like that's why, like, if I spend 5 days on one book and I'm loving it, that's great. If I spend 30 minutes on one book and I'm loving it, that's great too. I don't care about the number of books I read. I only care about like reading. And for me, because I do have access with like my ebooks and stuff, I have access to books. So that means that like I want to read most days. That's good for me. That's like a happy place.
Yeah.
At the same time, like I forget what I've read right now. It's like 75 or 80 or something like that. And that's like the lowest I've read in the last 5 years since my daughter was born. And that's good. I've consistently gone down in books every single year. And I've talked about before how like I had postpartum depression. I was reading way too much specifically because I would rather be reading a book than experiencing life. Like that was not a great time. But if my reading goes back up, that's great too, because I really don't care about the number of books I read. I care about enjoying reading. And if I don't feel like reading, then I absolutely don't have to read. But if I want to read, I'm going to read.
I think for me, it was an adjustment of being comfortable in reading across all age categories. Not that I haven't done it, but I think being on social media, those numbers, they shoot up very quick. You know what I'm saying? Very, very quickly. But I mean, I still do it. Like, I think this year has been the year when I have been like, if I'm going to pick up and review a picture book, I'm going to do it. If I'm going to pick up a level reader and read it, I'm going to do it. You know what I'm saying? Just like, some like you, Heather, like I'm reading because that's what I want to do with my time.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a TV watcher. I never really have been. Like, that's been me since a child. I've never been I'm sit down glued to a TV and need to consume 3-4 hours of TV at a time. So what do I do with my free time? I'm going to pick up a book and read.
Also, my two most read genres as of right now is literary fiction and nonfiction. So it's like, I can't, like, if I read like 3 books a month, that's miraculous. You know what I mean? Like,
it is.
You know how much times I'd be reading a paragraph and I'm just like, wait, what did I read?
Yeah. And like that type of book too, I feel like you almost have to have dedicated reading time. Like there's some books that's pretty easy, and different people too. It's easy to immerse yourself in the story. Like someone saying your name right by you, you're like, I don't even hear you. Like, but then there's like other books where like you have to let your brain focus. And if the TV's on or the kids are talking or somebody's driving by or whatever, right out of it. No idea.
The first 25 pages is like a description of a garden.
Listen.
Like, you have to just be Googling all these different... I'm reading Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Right? The first chapter is like 4 pages. Took me like a half an hour to read it because I am just Googling all of the plants that this woman is writing about in she book. And I'm like, are you a horticulturalist? Like, get to the point. And it's like every flower, every leaf, and I'm like, bitch, what is this? So it takes a lot more out of you, even if something is the same amount of pages.
Yeah.
Even if the writing is not hard, just things like historical context, plants, and other stuff. Like you have to pause and think about it.
And yeah, and like some people will stop and like try and understand it, and some people will just skim right on by it. It doesn't matter. They're not picturing it anyways, and they just skate right over it, and it's like a very different reading experience.
Yeah. What do you mean there was like a whole other character in the book? Like, what are you talking about? I didn't remember that. That was me once when I read a book. I wasn't enjoying the book and we had to read it for a book live show. And I put the audiobook on 3 times speed. And it was a thriller too. It was like a mystery novel, right? And we're talking about the book and they were discussing the plot twist. This was for Bashman Book Club. So Paige and Lynell was like, oh yes, and then this happened. I was like, wait. What? That's what she was the one who did it. I didn't know that. And they were like, yeah, it's right there in the book.
That was so funny. Listen, one time I was on Beautifully Bookish Bethany's channel. We were reading what's the N.K. Jemisin, the Broken Earth trilogy? What's the first book?
Oh,
The
none
fifth
of you
season.
asked me a question.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I haven't read
Okay,
that
listen,
series.
so it's
The
like
fifth
a
season.
very like heavy book. Like there's a lot of trauma and stuff on page, and also it's very scientific and all of that. So me, I was reading a chapter a day. I had to read my chapter a day. I had mapped out how many chapters it was. I would have it done by the live show. I did that, right? A chapter a day. So we're in the live, and the end of the live, Bethany's like, so what you guys like want to see happen in the next book? And I was like, well, I want to see this place destroyed. And they were like, the book started with that. I was like, what?
Oh shoot.
I was like, that wasn't there the whole time? They were like, no, like it was gone. I was like, listen, I read that first chapter a month ago. I don't know. So I felt like very questionable, but I read the book. I just was unaware of some context that we had going on.
I had to slow down my audiobook listening to help retain better because like in the position I was at in work before, I had more free time to like be able to listen while I was working. I can't really listen to audiobooks while I was working in what I do now. But like so I would listen to a lot of books like at like 2 times or 2.5. And then I'm basically at the point where I can't really listen to fantasy on audio just because I miss so much stuff.
Yeah.
I was last year I wanted to read Young Mungo by Douglas Stewart. So I decided to go with the audiobook, which is read in a very heavy Scottish Glaswegian accent. And I was like, I don't know what in the Loch Ness Monster this man is saying. So I ended up getting the ebook and I read it visually because I was like, no, right? But if I wanted to like rush so that, for like quantity reasons, I would have just like put it on double speed, not understand anything. But, sometimes you kind of have to realize that it's okay to spend a lot of time on a book. It took me Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead. I started it in November of 2022. I finished it in June of 2023. No, sorry, November of 2021. Finished it in June of 2022. And then in June of 2022, I started Ruth Ozeki's new book, whatchamacallit, the Book of Form of Emptiness. And I didn't finish it until December. And like I was feeling bad about that, but I remember so much about those books and I enjoyed them so much, especially Great Circle. And it's like at the end of the day, I read the book and I enjoyed it. Like, does it matter that it took me so long?
Yeah, I don't think you should feel bad about however you do it. I don't.
Yeah. I'm in the same position as you this year. I think we may have talked about it briefly. I have in the past have been able to, 2.25. I can't anymore. I don't know what changed in between last year to this year, but I'm not retaining information the same way. And so it's 1.5. And it's been like I just finished Delicious Monsters, right?
Yeah.
It took me months to read that. It took me months to read that book because
I haven't even started it yet. I have to read that I have the audio too for that.
It took me months to read it, and it's a good. I thought the audio experience was great, but it's a big book, and so I was listening to it at 1.5. By the time I was slowly making my way through, the library was like, "Oh, sis, you got to give this up." So I said, "Well, fair enough." And it's not like I can turn it in late. They just snatch it from you. So then I had to wait another 8 weeks to get it back, and I took my time and worked through it slowly. But it's just like I feel like in the past it would have been like, oh, I got 3 days left. Let's pump this bad boy up to 2.5 to get through it. But now it's kind of like, well, if I don't finish it, I'll give it back and then I'll put it back on hold. And when it comes to me, it comes to me, which is it. And I think it goes to show too that the style in which you read can also change, because life changes. You change as a person. I feel like maybe because I am getting older now, I don't remember shit, y'all. Like nothing. Like I have sticky notes everywhere now because I just don't remember anything. And so when I've been doing my reading now, I'm like, yeah, I'm having difficulty retaining information the way that I used to.
I never remember anything, like, anyways. Like,
so it doesn't matter.
So, yeah, I don't know.
No, it's definitely like it's changed a lot for me between like in the past year on being able to listen to those audiobooks. I'm like, if there's too much world building, I can't listen to the audiobook. I need to see it with my eyes.
Yeah.
I'm like, and even I know a lot of people have been talking about sometimes they'll just read the audiobook to like go through it faster, or like if people will tell you, oh, if you're not enjoying reading it physically, read the audiobook. I'm like, well, if I'm not enjoying it physically, I'm probably not going to really like it on the audio either.
Yeah.
Audio reading an audio book for quickness only works if you have the physical book, so you're reading and listening at the same time, at least for me. So that's the only way I could put an audiobook on like 2 times speed. But like if I have to listen to an audiobook without reading the visual or physical copy, it ain't going above 1.5.
Yeah,
I don't understand when I don't know how people and they're like listening to an audiobook and it's I'm like, yeah, like what?
It used to be me. I used to be able to process it so well.
Oh no, I tried raising the speed on The God of Good Looks, and that started sounding crazy.
Okay.
Especially with those Trinidadian accents, no.
Oh yeah, there's an accent narrator.
Forget on double speed, honey. We already speak on double speed.
Yeah, that's what I realized. I'm like, why am I speeding this up? They're already talking fast to begin with.
Oh gosh, I remember I was watching my friend April yes Maximus, and she listens to audiobooks a lot too, and she could listen to high speed. And I was watching one of her vlogs, this was a few years ago, and she was just like playing fetch with her dog, and then you're just hearing in the background. I'm like, yo, and she fetching with your dog. I'm listening to. I'm like, girl, what is that?
And she can discern exactly what's happening. It's like, I used to be able. I cannot do that anymore. I have
to sit down sometimes. Like I can't even be doing too many other tasks. Like I'll listen while I'm doing the dishes or something. But if I'm trying to do anything else, like more complicated, I can't.
Listen, listen. I abuse that 30-second rewind button when I'm listening to it. I'm like, wait, what? No, take me 10 minutes to listen to a 2-minute portion of the book.
The last question I had is, what is your ideal book budget?
I'm bold of you to assume I have a budget.
I mean, truthfully, for me, including my $12 of Kindle Unlimited, it's about $20 a month. Like I think it's much easier, I guess, in that it's not like I don't have the money. I'll just tell you straight, I don't have the money. More power to you. If you do, happy for you. But I don't. But like for me, I don't feel happy thinking about spending money on books. I feel stressed. I feel not good. It's not a dopamine hit for me at all. So the fact that I'm not like, oh, I would be so much happier if I had like $100 for books today. Truthfully, that's just not my mindset. It really isn't. So for me, it's like $20 a month. I buy my Kindle Unlimited, and then there's like a couple of authors that they have like 3 or 4 releases a year, and I will buy their release on ebook. But like I'm not spending money. I don't want to spend money, and buying books has nothing to do with my reading. So
I wouldn't say I have a budget, but I generally don't buy more than 3 books a month. That's just my thing. Like I know I joke about like I buy too much books, and it is too much books when you consider like for 2023 so far, I've bought 12 books, right? Which is like a little less than 3 books a month. I don't know. I can't do maths. I don't know. Probably, right? But I've only read 8 books. So for me, it still ends up being like a bit of I still end up buying more than I read. But actually, I don't buy that much anyways because I don't read that much anyways, right? So I generally don't go over more than 3 books a month. And that's always been the case. Like there'll be months where I might go 5, 6, 7. I don't buy more than I've never bought more than 10 books in a month before. Maybe one. Actually, that's a lie, because I just remembered Orlando in December, but that's the thing. Like, if I go away, I will buy a lot of books. And I actually did have a budget for when I traveled to Orlando in December because I saved my money and I was like, I'm going to go to
Mm-hmm.
a bookstores and I'm going to buy books. So I probably spent like about, I probably, I don't even, God, I have to do maths with the US. Um, let's say I probably budgeted like $1,000 TT, which is a good bit of amount. That's like 100 and something US for
Right.
books, right? And that's what I spent.
Right.
Maybe I spent a little bit more than that, a little bit more. But like I, you kind of have to like for that. That's different, right? Because it's like it's a trip, and I don't get to do that very often. So I allowed myself to buy that obscene amount of books while I was there.
Yeah.
Um,
Makes sense.
right now, the only thing that I'm allotting is KU. That's what's I got rid of at the time that I had made a video about me not buying books. Maybe like a couple of days later, I got rid of Audible. Because I just wasn't using it, and it was no purpose in it. And if anything's an Audible exclusive, I'm just gonna have to read the book physically. It's just as simple as that. I just couldn't justify the expense. So right now, I make the allotment for KU, which I do use not only just for, the indie authors that I read, but also there's a lot of comics and graphic novels that I like to read on KU because I maxed out my Hoopla checkouts. Like it is what it is. I feel like I don't get enough at my, but I'm not going to complain about it.
How many do you have for Hoopla?
10.
We have 15, and then like 5 flex books.
I've been talking to my manager for the past couple of weeks. I'm like, so about the budget, do you think that maybe, I said, I'm asking this as a patron, could we possibly get an increase on the Hoopla checkouts? But so I use mine, and I use my daughter's Hoopla checkouts as well. And KU kind of helps me make that adjustment whenever I do run on my Hoopla checkouts. But right now I can't afford it. I can't. Every time I think like I'm in a month where I'm like, oh, I have a little bit of extra money, it's like, for instance, a couple weeks ago, my fob in my car went out. And if anybody knows, when your fob for your key goes out and that key becomes unprogrammed, you need 2 whole new keys and even to be able to drive the car. For me, that was a $500 fix. For more people, it can be more expensive depending upon the make of the model of the car. So with just stuff like that, it may not seem like a big thing, like, oh, $20 here, $30 here. But for me right now, it's kind of like $20 here, $30 here is what allows me to build my savings account. That way, when I had to take my car to the shop, it wasn't oh my gosh, where am I going to get this money from? It was because we live in a city. I don't know how many people know, like me and my daughter live in a city. I don't have any family here, and I'm a single parent. So our car is the way that we get from point A to point B. I don't have my car. I don't get to work. She doesn't get to school. And so I have to make sure that above anything and everything else, that I have this cushion for when things like that do go left. And so $20 can add up for me and can save me in a situation where I'm like, dang, I need to be able to get out of this. Or, I need to be able to. It's weird because my car just basically screamed F you in the past 2 months. Like literally, there was an issue with it. I had to pay for a rental. Couldn't figure out the issue. Then literally a couple weeks later, I had to drop another $500 to get the car fixed. So I don't have a book budget because I can't afford it right now.
Yep.
Yeah, for me, like I have the money right now because I'm in a place where I'm not paying a mortgage. I am looking for a house and I have money set aside because I saved a lot of money by not spending on like different things that I have but when I get the house, I'm like, I'm gonna have to be thinking of my monthly expenses. So I'm trying to like cut back on my spending of things that I don't need, especially because I do get a lot of books for free.
Yeah,
so
that too.
The stuff that I don't the stuff that I can't get from the library or that I can't get from the publisher, that I can't get from NetGalley, is usually what I end up buying. And I'm like, do I really need to rush and read that, or can I just wait for it to like for the library to get it?
A lot of this too is like many of us started booktubing when we were like teenagers. I was 18, so I was an adult, but I was definitely less. I had less expenses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like it's easy to just kind of like splurge on books, and then you get older and like you learn things that you never knew were a thing. Like you have to replace your car keys, you have to like fix something that broke in your house, and it's like, wait, no, that's I just used to be like daddy, and then it's fixed, you know. But like, you know, when you become an adult, you actually have to start contributing to things. You have to spend money that you didn't think you have to like, and things are so. Butter is so expensive.
Why is butter so high right now?
I don't know what is
so high.
Are you milking golden cows? What is happening? Is the Kerrygold really have gold in it? I don't know. It's like, I don't know, because I started baking recently. And I used to be like, oh my God, cakes are so expensive. Why do these, you know, bakers charge so much money? And then I made my first cake and I was like, these people need to charge more money. This is like slave labor. What is wrong with you? You know? So like you get older, you realize that things are expensive. So you have to fork out more money. And then suddenly, like, you know, 10-year anniversary edition of the Hunger Games trilogy starts looking less necessary.
Yes, it does. It's like, oh, child, no. It's the same text.
Gold foiling ain't looking so gold anymore.
Yeah, like I know Jess mentioned it earlier about the buying multiple editions of the books. Like that just has no point to me.
I can't.
I can't. I don't even like when I have multiple, like when I have the audio and like two physical editions. Like, you know how sometimes the publisher will send you the ARC and then they'll send you a finished copy.
Why?
I always say why. Like, I don't understand why they do that, because like it just feels unnecessary to me, because it's not like anything dramatically changes.
It's a waste of paper.
I always end up unhauling one of those.
I don't mind certain things. Like right now, I'm collecting 2 classics editions. One because it's very cheap, and it sells locally. It's like these small mass paperbacks of like classics.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm collecting these, and I'm collecting the Penguin drop caps. And,
those are gorgeous.
Yeah, and I have like about maybe half of them so far. And so I have a couple crossovers. So like I have 2 Prides and Prejudices. I'm gonna have 2 Jane Eyres. That's stuff like that is fine with me. And then with Hungry Ghosts, the author gave me an ARC last year, and he gave me an ARC of the US edition, but I really love the UK edition, so I have 2 copies of that. I have the US and UK of Young Mungo, and then I have a drop cap of Joy Luck Club, and I have like a older edition hardcover of Joy Luck Club because I love that book. So I don't mind having 2 copies of books that I really, really love, or that happen to have crossovers in 2 collections that I'm collecting. But to have like some people like have, you know, like 3, 4, 5 copies of the same book, and it's like you don't need to do all of that. I mean, if it makes you happy, then that's fine. But like spending money and like having so much editions of the same book is just like, you don't need to do that if it's not something you don't really, really, really want to do.
I think they're either lying about what they can afford, or they are severely like undervaluing their level of wealth. It's like one or the other. It's either you're spending money that you don't have, or you're rich. Like I'm pretty sure that I'm pretty sure that who has money and who doesn't would be surprising based on some of the books.
I think it would be too, based off of if it was really a reality.
Mm-hmm.
Like if it was shown who has money and who doesn't.
Yeah,
I think people would be surprised based off of buying habits. I agree.
And I mean, I think obviously people collect special editions because they're pretty. Like that has nothing to do with reading also. And in the same way that like I don't buy a book because I loved it. I loved reading it, and I'll read it the same way I read it the first time. I won't buy it. But like it's just whatever you want to do and
Yeah.
what you can do. But I think if people were more honest about the why or the how or the means, I think that would be good. You know, if you have 1,000 books, I'm really happy for you. But I think that being honest about whether or not you can afford that and when you could afford it and how you as a 17-year-old shouldn't be spending all your money on books. I think that would be good.
Yeah. And like sometimes you kind of have to like, because as I said, I'm collecting the two things. The the cheaper one, I'm collecting it because it's affordable, and they actually have a really great selection of classics in there. And I'm like, it's affordable, it's a great collection. And then the Penguin drop caps, I am collecting it because it's pretty, but it's only 26 of the books. And I've seen other editions of classics, and like I get tempted, and then I remind myself, you already have two. Like you're already collecting two. You don't need to go and collect the cloth bound and then the black spines and then the orange spines of the same book. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you find with
And
what
for something like that, it really is the collection that brings joy. It's seeing all those matching spines or like, you know, like that's the joy. It's not even so much, well, I don't really like this book, but I liked this one. Like it's them as a whole being in your home that is joyful to you. And that's totally fine.
and that's also why, you know, you have to think about like don't just collect something because it's pretty. Look at what's in the collection too. Because different classic collections have different books, right? And that's
Yeah.
something that I wish I had prioritized when I was started collecting the drop caps. Around half of them are books that I'm honestly not interested in. I will read them because I am collecting it and I've already committed to it. But like if I wasn't so hasty in beginning to collect the drop caps, I would have probably just looked for a different collection that had a different set of books that I was more interested in, right?
Yeah.
And again, that goes back to what you were saying about the importance of being honest with yourself. Like, why are you buying these books? And you know, like, what's the purpose of it? And
Yeah.
it's okay also to be honest about the purpose of it. Like, I'm very happy with the fact that I'm when I finish collect the drop caps, it's probably going to take me years upon years to get to all of them, and like I'm
Mhm.
okay with that, you know. And I
Right.
think it's
Exactly.
cool. I just have to be honest with that. I'm not going to be ashamed of the fact that I have this collection and I haven't read every single one of them, and it's only 26 books. So
Right. Yeah. I
honesty,
definitely think it is. Like, ask yourself the question, and whatever your answer is, just be real about that. Don't lie to
Mhm.
yourself. Don't pretend
Yeah.
like
and lie to
if
your
you could.
followers.
I don't understand that on Booktube. People will like make up excuses to justify why they hauled books. Like, remember when they were saying they were saving publishing by hauling all those books during the middle of the pandemic?
Literally, I cannot tell you how hard I was rolling my eyes behind my screen. I was just like,
And I was just like, you know, the library buys more copies of books than you guys. So if anybody's
Like-
keeping publishing afloat, it's the library buying all those editions. You and your one copy of that random book is not single-handedly saving publishing.
it's wild.
And the library pays more for the books anyway than we do.
So much
There's
more.
another thing you have to be careful of with when you're getting into your like buying stuff. It's very easy to convince yourself, well, I'm supporting the authors, I'm supporting the bookstore, I'm supporting
Yeah.
the industry.
I kind of hate
That's
that
great.
that rhetoric.
Yeah. It's good. Like if you're doing it genuinely, like very
Yeah.
genuinely, but
Right.
also like a lot of times that's just the excuse.
I think, yeah, exactly. Like there's absolutely nothing wrong with the words themselves. I think it's like delusional though for a lot of people.
Mhm.
It's like you should not be buying that book. And the fact that you're doing it to support the author or vote with your dollars or what have you is not a good reason for you to be buying that book because you shouldn't be.
Yeah, but like even with book Twitter, like I have a lot of author friends, and like I was having a discussion with one of my friends about that because there was a big push to like buy all these books to support the authors. But then so many authors were like have to constantly ask people for money because they're not making enough money to support themselves, and then they're buying books. So like they were also kind of falling into that same trap because right now it's like it's cool to have the latest books. It's great to it's like great to show that you're a reader and that you have the books everybody's talking about.
But then the thing is too, they don't read the books too, right? Like a lot of people will buy a book under the guise of supporting the author, and then they don't read the books.
They don't read it.
And like it happened during 2020. Like people buying books by Black authors and then not reading them. Same thing, they were subscribing to like Black booktubers and stuff, and not watching their videos and making things worse for people in the algorithm.
Making it worse.
Yeah,
and have made it worse.
It's a kind of like, oh, look at what I have, as opposed to look at what I'm engaging with, right? Because again, it's quantity and over actual quality and engagement. Because I'm from the Caribbean, people assume that I'm Black, even though I'm not. And so during the 2020 protests, I gained a lot of followers because people thought I was Black, and I'm like,
are they blind?
I don't know. And even
like, have they never seen a Black? I don't understand. That happens to multiple like people of like Asian heritage on books, but I never understand that. I'm like, are you blind?
Yeah, it happens to Indo-Caribbean people all the time because people just don't associate India with the Caribbean, which is fine. You don't have to know everything about every corner of the world. But like, even if I was Black, like, how is following my Instagram helping anybody? Like, it's not institutional racism. You're only going to follow me and then to not engage with my content and just make have like 1,000 subscribers and 2 views on each video. Like, no,
right?
Just I'd rather have 10 subscribers and 2 views on each video.
Yes.
Right. Your channel will do better with 10 subscribers and 2 views than 10,000 subscribers and 2 views.
Yes. I'll preaching the whole word.
That's a whole live show by itself, right there.
That is a whole live show by itself.
That always makes me laugh during Black History Month, which is another weird thing Booktube does. Like what Desiree mentioned of like she hates when people will get a book for performative allyship. I really am starting to like dislike Heritage Month, like in the way Booktube celebrates them. And I've had this conversation with Saajid before, just because of like people will go out and performatively buy these books like they're doing something, or like talking about like supporting this author because they're from this background, but then they really know nothing about people from that background. They've never interacted with somebody from that background. Like, also, you're not going to learn about that, like about those people just from reading like a fictional book alone. Like, you need to actually interact with people.
I don't think that's even like their point. Like, I don't think they're trying to learn about a different part of the world or a different experience. They really like, it's not being mean to say that it really is for appearance's sake. It's for people to see you doing it, and that's what it's for. That's like, that is the motivation.
Appearance over engagement. It is. And like, I mean, if the only time you read a book by a Black author is during Blackathon, or if the only time you read a book by an Asian author is during, what is it called, the Asian Readathon or whatever, like, I would rather, like, I honestly would vibes more with the old white ladies in the nursing homes only reading Nora Roberts than with you, you know, reading something adjacent to the hate you give once a year. Like, no.
And they're always reading the same book everybody else is reading too.
Same one. The book of the month pick.
It's the book. They're like, no, they're
really,
like, oh my gosh.
Educated me on like issues and the culture.
It's like those books weren't on like all the end of the year best like list from like the NPR, Kirkus, New York Times bestsellers. They act like it's a new book like that somebody just recently brought and made popular. Like, no, everybody was talking about it outside of the Booktube bubble.
Yeah.
It really like educated me on like Muslim culture. Like, okay, honey, You read an S.K. Ali book. Congratulations.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's a good introduction to learning things about those cultures, but you can't be turning to fiction and act like it's all fact to learn about a different culture or a different background. It's like your starting point. Go read some nonfiction, go read some articles, go interact with people in real life.
Right.
Listen, I know all about Africa. Okay, I read the God. What's the book called? I forget the name of the book. Chinua Achebe. I read his book.
Oh, don't do that now.
Things fall apart.
Oh, we've been on here for like 2 hours now. I think this is a good place to stop. Any last thoughts about Booktube and their buying habits?
Go outside and grass. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Like, I think your buying habits are good. Just be honest and be real and be aware of your influence.
Yeah,
and also, buying is not reading. They're different things. You can be one without the other, and that's okay.
I agree. Transparency is everything, and we can have people enjoy things without them having to go into debt or like enabling them to go into debt.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always tell people it's not worth it. If you don't have the money, it's not worth it in the long run. It's because this is a moment in time. It's not worth it. I mean, like I said, if you got it, do whatever. But I especially feel for those who may feel pressure to do these things and really do not have it in the background. It will screw you over in the long run with the way that capitalism is set up. Unfortunately, the way the credit system is set up here in the U.S., it will screw you over in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
I learned that the hard way in my 20s, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody else.
Yeah, I worked in the credit card department. I don't recommend people buying books on credit. And I'm lucky my mom told me don't buy certain things on credit because you'll be buying it multiple times, paying interest. And then I, in my early 20s, got a job with the bank working with credit cards. So then I definitely knew like what not to do.
And I didn't have that lesson. And so I had to learn that lesson later than what I should have,
I had to help my dad pay off his debts with credit cards like a couple years ago, and that was also like, luckily I had the money saved up to help him, but that's also not fun.
It's not fun at all.
I agree. Well, I was going to say, it's just, I really feel compassion for people who are feeling the pressure from the mysterious, the random anonymous community that somehow is pressuring them. But some of you do feel pressure, and I really feel for you with that. And it's okay not to do it.
It is okay not to do it.
I love that. Can't relate, but y'all be easy.
Exactly.
That is Heather in one line. That's Heather to a T. Can't relate, but y'all be easy. That's Heather on like everything.
You are all messy, but I
That is alarmingly accurate, and I'm never going to see it now.
All right, so I'm going to end the show here. Thanks so much, everybody who tuned in, and enjoy your night.
Bye, everybody. Bye.